Let me show you that stats module. I basically am just exposing one method. That's a set people. And so that's right here. Here's my API for that. Set people will fire set people. And so basically you send it an amount of people and it's going to set that amount and then it's going to render. And render is going to take that people value and it's going to spit it out on the page as you see here, which is awesome. So now this module automatically updates. Let me show you back in my people module here, which is what we built in the last video. Stats.setPeople. So whenever we render, whenever this module renders here, I'm going to call stats.setPeople with a people length. So which right now is 0. Let's add a test. That's automatically 1, test 1. So now these are talking to each other. Great. So this works very well, but it doesn't scale to a large degree. So if you have 4, 5, 6 modules on a page, you're probably going to be good. But what happens if you now, let's say there's 10 modules that all need to know when people get added to this list. So you have stats, maybe say you have a header thing that's going to update and you have a footer. And let's say there's 12 other things. I'll delete those for now. And let's say some other developer wrote header, so it's not called set people, it's called update count. And then this one's called something else, change. Basically, the problem of this pattern is not only is there now a lot of repeated code, but this module, this people module, this guy right here, this guy has to be aware of every other module that depends on it. And it also has to be aware of their API. So I've got to know that the header module needs to know when I render, and the header module needs update count to be called. And maybe update count is going to be called differently too. Maybe it's going to be called like that. That's no good. So now I'm basically just having to keep this huge list of stuff in my people module. There should be a better way. I should be able to fire off one command here, and then every other module that depends on me automatically updates, and I don't have to keep track of that. It's called coupling. If you picture railroad cars with their couplers on them, basically the way we have it here is this is tightly coupled to all the other modules. I have to know that they exist. I have to know that they want to be updated when I render, and I have to know how to tell them that I've updated. So that's a bad pattern for a larger application. So we're going to use the PubSub pattern to kind of scale this application a little cleaner. Let me kind of show you in visual terms what we have right now. So this is using revealing module patterns to talk to each other. My module, let's call this people. And then let's say this is my stats module. My people module updates. So it has to tell the stats module, hey, I updated. And then it also has to tell this guy, hey, I updated. And then it has to tell this guy, hey, I updated. Now let's say the stats module, or let's say this module 3 here can also change the count of people. So then I can actually say, hey, people, change your count, add a person. Okay, that's fine. And then he's got to go tell stats. And then maybe module 4 also wants to know when stats are changed. So then he's got to listen here. And then this guy talks to here. Like, it gets pretty messy pretty fast. And I'm only doing adding people to a list. There's no other events going on. That's messy. And PubSub will clean that up for us. So with PubSub, we have this like central guy. And if you think of DOM events, like I have this button right here. And when I click on it, there's a click event that fires. As many modules as want to can subscribe to that click event. And the button doesn't know, the button doesn't care. The button just sends off a click event. All the other modules receive a click event because the DOM, the document object model, handles all those events for them. So we're now going to create a PubSub. Sometimes that's called a mediator. Some people use mediator to mean different things. Sometimes that's just called an events bus or an events system. So that's what we're creating right here. PubSub mediator events. And can I stretch? Nope, now that copied it. Okay, so now this module will just send a changed event. Boom, I'll send a changed event. And anyone else that's listening for that changed event will receive that changed event. So he's listening. Let's say he's listening. I'm listening to that changed event too. People changed. Okay, cool. I'll update. And then, oh, I'm listening too to that changed event. Awesome. I will update as well. So all these guys are going to update. And all this guy did was send a change event. So that can look something more like this. Let's delete that. It will look more like PubSub.emit. Sometimes it's called an emit. or a publish. Let's publish people change. And let's send it the list of the amount people.length. There we go. So now that's all the people. Tell you what, let's actually just send off people in general. So somebody else can count the length if they need to know about the length. People changed, and then I'm sending them all the people. Great, that's it. And then I want in my stats module to be able to subscribe to that event. So let's go PubSub dot, I'm going subscribe to people change. And then I want set people to fire. So I want set people to fire whenever people have changed. Excellent. Now I can actually completely remove my API, and we'll move off of that. So let's go and look at this PubSub, and let's see what this PubSub actually looks like. Here's the bare minimum PubSub that I wrote right now. I wrote an events object. I prefer events. Kind of the classical way is you have publish. Your module is a PubSub module, and you can do PubSub dot subscribe. You can do PubSub dot unsubscribe, and you can do PubSub dot publish. So that's where you get the name PubSub from. You're subscribing and you're publishing. You're PubSubbing. But I kind of prefer terminology of events. So it's my events thing, and you do events.on, events.off, and events.emit. So that's kind of my preferred way of doing it. Feels a little bit more like the DOM. So events.on, and I can on to an event. People changed. When people changed, I want to run some handler, some method. And then you can trigger or emit are kind of the two ways I like to call it. So events.trigger. People change. 3 people now. Or emit, which is kind of Angular's terminology for that. An event emitter. So here's the simple way of building it. I'll put this code up there, and you can copy and paste this code. But basically, you have an events object that's currently empty because there are no events created by default. And whenever you subscribe, it basically takes that event name, and it's going to say, oh, if it doesn't exist, let's go ahead and create that array. So let's say someone down here subscribes. Let's say somebody does events.on people again. Let's do that. People changed. And we want some handler to fire. So then this will say, oh, people change doesn't exist. So let's create people change. And let's make it just a blank array. So no events yet. And then it's going to push our function that we received, which is some handler. So now some handler gets added on there. So let's say someone else subscribes to people changed as well. Somebody else, this is going on in some other module. They're going to say, when people changed, let's do some other handler, some other function. Okay, well, that's going to get pushed on there. And then when somebody emits, let's say module number 4 down here goes events.emit, people change. Now let's say it just gives it a value of 3. The emit is simple. If that event already exists, let's do a for each. Let's loop through every item in that array, and let's call that function with the data they gave us. So the data in this case is the number 3. So we're going to fire some handler 3, and we're going to fire some other handler 3. And that's basically how that works. So you can just copy and paste this code right here if you want an event emitter on your page. And then you have an events module. So let's go ahead and put this to some use here. Are we good? We delete everything? Yes. Okay, let's go back to our page. Pull up our console. Events.on. Let's just call it activate. On activate, let's just create a function here. Data. And this will just alert the data. Great, so now I can trigger that or emit. Let's emit that with 3. So now it alerts 3. Cool, let's go ahead and add another listener to it. On activate, we want to also console log that data. And let's emit there, so it's going to alert 3, and then it's going to console log 3. So this function fired first, and then this function fired second. So that's basically how that works. And then you can also unsubscribe to where only one event is going on at that point. So let's go ahead. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to put this code online so you can use it if you want. There's also some great PubSub libraries out there. If you were just to search JavaScript PubSub library or JavaScript events library, there are ones that might have a lot more complex features. So maybe you could subscribe to a namespaced event. Somebody could go events.on, people, and that will be all people changes will fire this function. And then events.on people.change, so they're namespaced. So that way, on people change, this will still fire because it's namespaced. On any kind of people event, this will fire. And then this one will only fire on people.change. So there's some other ones where, you could people.change first, and then that would be some first change handler. So this guy would fire on any people change event. This guy would only find on a people.change.first event, and this guy would fire on any event from the people module. So there are other libraries out there that add more features, but this one works too.